Uh, there was a debate at my college which led us to discuss about the existence of God. And the students, they said the scientists, and I don't know which scientists they were talking about, but they said the scientists believe that there is no God and that all the things have been created by nature.
And what is nature?
Well, this is it. We try to explain, but it explains that that nature is created by God.
That is where the nigger is hidden, in fact.
Yeah.
What is nature? Unless you determine what nature is, the debate cannot proceed any further.
They proved their theory by experiments. They said the two planets collided with each other, and so the two animals.
You're too vague for me to answer that question. The point is that you have to be very analytical when you come across an atheist, and first get the nature of it. Most of the atheists who are intelligent people, they don't behave like the atheists which you confronted. They know their weaknesses, so they call themselves agnostics. They only say this, that maybe there is a God and maybe there is not, but we don't know. So as long as we have not proof enough or scientific proof enough, we are not compelled to believe in that thing. So this is how they begin. But the atheists are those who say there is positive evidence of his not being in existence. I mean, there is no existence to God. It is positively proved. And they have the weaker field, in fact, to operate. So it depends on what sort of an atheist you are facing. The most common argument put forward in favor of the existence of God by the old religious scholars, which still continues to the day, is this, that after all there is a universe. Who created this? This is a very simple argument put forward. And when you say that, you're immediately caught in a vicious circle. The atheist would retort immediately, all right, if God created the universe, who created God? And if there must be a creator, then there has to be a creator of that God, and you have yourself proved that this is just a difficult question. You can never get out of it. So this is a very logical approach by the atheists when they say that. But the reason why they have got the advantage is because you have wrongly put the case entirely, altogether. You can sit down, please, and I explain. The fact is that those who say because there is universe, so somebody must have created it, they are wrong. This is not the way to put it. The most important thing is first to discuss eternity. Is there eternity? Do all things which are present are eternal or not? If they are eternal, what are the factors of changes and how the direction is given to them? If, for example, let's go back in history, they say the world has a history of 5.6 billion years, or 6.7, some 6.5, I don't exactly remember, maybe 6.5 billion years ago, that the Big Bang took place. So ever since, there has been change. Not an iota has passed where you don't observe change. Things are developing all to a perfection or near perfection. They are traveling. Nothing is stationary. And complexity is born out of simplicity. So if complexity is not guarded, it can turn into simplicity. It disintegrates. But for simplicity to turn into complexity is a very important scientific observation, because it's an uphill task. And the uphill task requires energy from outside. The input is always greater than the output. And it's never so that output is greater than the input. So it's impossible. If there is input of some sort, and organization is input, if from simplicity the creation is traveling towards complexity, and you observe organization, then there has to be some organizer. Now, when they say, all right, if there has to be an organizer, who organized God, you say you don't know. Because unless you know the facts, you can't raise a question. Of one thing you can be certain, that this universe is not eternal. And because it is not eternal, there has to be something preceding it, and that may be eternal. And there is no argument against eternity. This is why I started with the question of eternity. Ultimately, it will end up there. If you have absorbed the whole thing, this is how it develops again. That simplicity, complete simplicity, such simplicity as the whole laws of science are non-operative at that stage, before the Big Bang. There is no law of nature, this is called event horizon. There is nothing at all. No physical law, no chemical law, no other law in operation. So it is nothingness. In other words, this is what we call nothingness. We say Allah created from nothingness. In the scientific terminology, nothingness means a thing without property. Now when you say something without property, that thing disappears. It's only a word of necessity we have to use for something. Otherwise, without property means nothing. Everything which is in existence has to have a property. Some measurement, some mass, some radiation or anything. I mean, observable phenomena is called property, or which exudes itself. So the scientists believe, and they have positive evidence now, that at the time of Big Bang there were no properties. So the properties began to take shape ever since, and developed from simplicity to complexity. And that complexity had a direction. It was not an haphazard affair. It was a direction which it took. And that direction developed into complex scientific laws. And those complex scientific laws agreed with each other. And so much so that when a law was created, and if that law as such operated, there might have been no chance left for life to operate, then an exception was made to that law. In such detail, things were worked out. For example, when things become hot, they expand. And when they become cold, they contract. This is a general law. But in water, if it had acted exactly like that, there would have been no life. So an exception was made there. When the ice is made, it expands. Why? Because it was necessary for life. So there was nothing of blindness about it, no element of blindness about it. There is purpose, there is direction, there is government, and complete organization and full control over things. Now, why life would not have existed if this law was operated that when you heat it, things expand, when you heat them, things expand, when you apply cold, they contract. Because the scientists say that when life took root in the oceans, if ice also contracted, what would have happened? That the surface ice would have settled down until the whole sea would have turned into ice. And there was absolutely no question during that climate of any warmth within the sea. Hence, the possibility of life is obviated. So what happened was, there was an exception made. Ice must expand when it becomes cold. Cold and water, when water is cold enough, it must expand. So when it expands, it comes to the surface. And also, when it's a law that water turns into ice is a bad conductor of heat, which means once the whole surface of the sea is covered with thick ice, even if the temperatures outside are minus 100 degrees, the temperature below that would remain enough and comfortable for life. That is exactly what happened. So there are thousands and thousands of examples, I can quote on and on, where this phenomena of organization can be explained in a manner, as it is impossible for anybody, any scientist, to come out with the always repeated answer of chance. After all, there is some limitation to chance. Chance does not mean that for unlimited numbers of chances, it is possible to come and organize one after the other in a procession, an unending procession for that matter. So this is what I mean by organization. When there is organization and simplicity is traveling towards complexity, then there has to be an organizer. And if that organizer is eternal, there is no objection, scientific objection to that. Because anything can be eternal. If he is not eternal, then this universe has to be eternal. So from eternity, there is no escape. So if the organizer is eternal, then the vicious circle is immediately broken. We know universe, this is organized, but we don't know the creator, whether he was organized or was like that from eternity. So there is no objection, no scientific objection. This is how you can prove the existence of God to the atheist, at least to the extent that they can't mock at you and can't laugh at you that you're stupid and you're behaving in a manner that is not cannot survive in the modern age. No, this is wrong. The scientists are now turning into theists at a rapid rate, with the result that previously, 50 years ago, when the census was taken in America, the entire crop of scientists had not only become atheists, that because they were learning, it was the beginning of their learning and they had become proud of it. It was considered a shame to mention religion. They thought religion is just focus and science is science. That's the reality. Now the recent consensus has shown that 50% of the scientists in the world today have become theists. They believe in God. And because the science is reaching a state where it is becoming more and more difficult for man to consider that the chances took place. There is a scientist, a mathematician of high order and cosmologist by the name of Lyell. He has written a book together with somebody Singha, and they have mathematically considered the possibility of life coming into being on its own. Now, despite the fact that Mr. Lyell has gone too far away from common sense in giving his own theories of life, he has been very strongly censured because of that. But the basic argument, the scientific calculation of facts still remains intact. Nobody can attack that argument. So I'm not supporting what Lyell presents as theory of how life might have been created on Earth. Not at all. I'm just quoting that bit of argument with which he begins and which is the most important and fundamental point of his book. He says that for the first brick of life to be made, which is DNA and RNA, is the transformer part, he says so many enzymes are involved and so many proteins are involved that for the creation of those, you have to work it out scientifically. You have to have minus 400 chances to get together and organize. Now this is the term which, I mean 10 raised to the power of minus 400. It is impossible. No sane man on earth can believe that this can happen. Now this is a scientific mathematical language which may not be understood by others, but there are other mathematicians who have put it differently. One of them has suggested that if it is possible for the life chemistry to appear through chance, and for that chance to get organized to make the first brick of life, so many factors are involved that only a few years ago in America there was a great conference of world scientists on biology. I'm quoting one of them who belongs to the top of this branch of knowledge. He says, it's a very interesting example. He says, if you believe in that, you will also have to believe in this type of chance. That put alphabets on dices and throw the dices and expect those dices to get organized in a manner that words are made out of those letters, and those words get organized in sentences. Words and vowels and consonants organizing themselves into words and then into words meaningful. And then not only just any expression, but a meaningful scientific expression. And then another sentence is made, and every time you throw dice, sentence after sentence is created until you reach a book the size of 5,000 pages, full of scientific data, with full stops and everything. He says if this is possible, according to mathematical calculation, then it is possible for chance to create the first break of life, not to mention the other stages involved in the whole process of evolution. These people, they don't know their own subject. When they begin to brag against the existence of God, they simply are talking through their heads. Because now the scientists have reached a stage of knowledge that it's become impossible for the scientists to mock at the concept of existence of God. But I mean, it's a very long subject. I have just given you a taste of it.